This is a CW Spiral, a podcast run by two Barchies and a Bughead. We're your hosts, Sabrina Reed,
Michael Patterson,
and Reed Gaudens,
bringing you history about the network, the latest news, and in-depth spoiler-filled discussions of some of our favorite shows on the CW.
Okay, so I'm very excited for this podcast episode because we're going to be delving into what shaped us, the spiral, what TV shows really made us us. But first, we have to toot our horn just a little bit because I don't know if y'all saw it, but Ally McBeal reboot or revival, it's a go.
I mean, we're just talking things into existence at this point.
Our minds are too powerful.
Right,
yes.
right. And if we talk about bringing Legends of Tomorrow back, maybe we'll get a revival news next week. It's wild to think. I'm very excited, obviously, that the show, it's funny that we were talking about it on this episode. The show was quite influential to me when I was younger, even though I haven't actually watched it from start through finish. So it's pretty cool that it's getting the chance to come back. And I mean, as long as Callista Flockhart's on board, I will be tuning in.
And we were right on the money. It's not about her daughter, Ally McBeal. It's about another character's daughter, which is we were on the same road. It was just we took a different turn.
Yeah, our brains are right there. We were right there. We just missed the character, but the whole child is going to be the protagonist part. That was on the money.
But what this tells me is that our pitches are right in the right area. Different network, yes. But we're in there.
You're right in the pocket. So again, CW, I hope you took wonderful notes from last week's episode. If not, you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. I mean, it is available to you on basically every platform. I just, with the 2022-2023 landscape cemented for the CW, just let 2023, 2024, at least 1 to 2 of our ideas. If the mole brought them back to them, they might come up.
We're not picky. Take whichever ones you want.
As long as we get a producer's credit, we're happy.
Yes. Speak that back into existence. But I guess pivoting to the shows that shaped us, since we are talking about television that sort of made us who we are, let's kick it off with our first favorite shows, which mine was Sailor Moon. I love a magical girl. I truly do love the transformation sequences, love how much they kick butt and they fight. And I know I must have annoyed my mama every time we went to Blockbuster to pick up the same 3 VHSs. Because if you were a millennial growing up, you know that the possibility of the tape that you wanted being there probably wasn't there, but you would find 2 others and it would be fine.
I feel like I watched Sailor Moon, but I have no memory of it. The title's just so familiar. I must have watched it. I just don't remember it.
So do you remember a blonde girl with pigtails, meatballs, which Darian called her, what was it, Adenga Tama, the manga? Yeah, she has these big buns at the top of her head. And the guy that she liked, would tease her about it.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's a memory of actually watching or just seeing pictures later on.
True.
But I think I did watch it. I think it's a great influential show. And it says a lot about your interests now.
Yeah,
I would say strong female lead.
Yep, that's me. Is she strong? She's female. She's fighting someone. We have attitude. We love things. Yes, it's me. So what are your guys' favorite shows? That was the first thing you remember watching that you got obsessed with.
If I go all of the way back, it's definitely some sort of Nickelodeon cartoon. Rugrats. I remember being 5 and every night after dinner watching it and having dessert and watching ice cream and sitting on the floor and watching Rugrats. But yeah, it's always the Nickelodeon shows and the Disney Channel shows. That's So Raven and Lizzie McGuire were the 2 shows that I was obsessed with and needed to watch the new episodes when they aired or I was not happy.
It's that's seems to be the staple. It's Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, and Cartoon Network, especially for anyone who was really into anime, because Toonami was everything. But for Nickelodeon, Reed, did you have a favorite Rugrat? Were you a Tommy person, a Chucky?
I don't think so. That's a great question. I think Angelica was really fun. I know she's a bully and she gets a bad rap, but I love those kinds of characters. Obviously, like look at my favorite show now is Dynasty. That's basically Fallon.
That is true. But she was really great. I mean, Scene Stealing, A Boss, she had her own video, like solo video games. There's like one I think I had where like it's a mall adventure. And like, so you have to go to every shop and like do things with her. It's vaguely there. I remember it was a computer game back when things were like on CD-ROM.
Oh,
I know we're dating ourselves here, but that's okay.
I also really loved Susie Carmichael.
Yes.
I feel like she always showed up. She wasn't there often, but when she did pop up, she was like, I'm not taking anybody's crap. I love her.
No, she was great. And she'd always have a great line and always have to pull Angelica out of whatever mess that she had created because she ended like exasperated. Just like, here we go again.
What were your shows, Michael?
Yeah,
what were your shows?
I'm waiting. I mean, like when you think of me, what do you think of? Like, let's be honest here.
Superheroes.
Yeah. Like, I wore my Clark Kent outfit today. It's just for the occasion. I have to say, thinking back, a lot of ones come to mind, so I'm not really sure chronologically which ones come first. But there are 2 TV shows, and they both share the same name, Batman. Batman the Animated Series is probably the series I remember growing up with the most. It was on Cartoon Network all the time. And to this day, it is still one of my favorite shows. Surprise, surprise. Also, Batman 1966, the Adam West series. I grew up on that. I loved finding out what happened next time. Same Bat time, same Bat channel. Always obsessed with the cliffhangers, obsessed with the villains. Both of those would have been on quite regularly in my childhood. Along with probably Superman the Animated Series. It wasn't so cool back in the day how all the animated shows were just called Title the Animated Series. We had Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, Spider-Man the Animated Series, X-Men the Animated Series. I could go on, but I'm not going to. But probably I would say I have vivid memories of all of them, and maybe also the likes of Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z, and yet Rugrats would have been in there as well. Trying to think of other kids programs. Barney the Dinosaur.
Oh,
all
Barney.
of that
Barney.
stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Gotta go with the classics.
What an icon Barney is.
I know.
Wait,
that
okay,
unlocked so many memories.
I have a question about, obviously Sabrina and I are talking about American television. We grew up with American television, but you mentioned Cartoon Network, and I never thought about it until I guess this moment. Was Cartoon Network the same in the UK as it was here?
Oh, question.
That's a good question. I think it was a version of it. Like we wouldn't, probably because of licensing issues, we wouldn't have gotten everything at the same time that you guys got them. But like we did have a fully blown Cartoon Network channel. It wasn't just like nowadays you see Warner Brothers programs on every network under the sun. We just had an actual Cartoon Network channel that showed Cartoon Network programs. So you'd have Batman, you'd have The Mask, you'd have Freakazoid, you'd have all those things that were on the normal Cartoon Network as well. And I think at 10 p.m. it would change to TNT and all the adult programs would come on.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you didn't get Adult Swim then?
I don't think so. No, I did know of some of their programs, but I think it would have been through something like TNT. I remember being obsessed as a kid because they would show adverts for like Batman Returns, which was fit for 15-year-olds over here. So I was like, oh, I want to watch Batman Returns on TNT. So it was kind of cool. Obviously you'd have Batman, the cartoon, in the daytime, and then Batman Returns at nighttime. So it stayed in relation to it. But yeah, Cartoon Network was a big thing over here. It still is. But I feel like just as with everywhere in the world, those shows of the classic days gone by were the big thing. And now modern shows just aren't up to scratch. I'll always be biased towards the 90s, but just modern cartoons aren't up to scratch.
That's so
they're struggling out here.
Yeah. I wasn't really a Cartoon Network kid, so it's really interesting to hear about that. I feel like I had so many friends that watched like Dexter's Laboratory and
oh yeah,
what was the one with there was a dog and then like
Courage the Cowardly
Dog.
Yeah,
which was so scary as a kid.
I think I watched it once and it just wasn't for me. I tried my best to be a Cartoon Network kid, and I was like, it's just not hitting the same for me as Nickelodeon and Disney.
My mom hated it when I watched Courage the Cowardly Dog. I was obsessed with it as a kid. Like looking back now, it should not have been on for kids. That was not a kids program. But like you'd sit there and you'd watch along, and then you'd be terrified by stupid dog or a booga 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 and all of the terrifying things that would happen at it. But like, that shaped my childhood.
Yes, it was one of those. It took me the longest time to watch it because I was scared of it. I remember they even moved it to a later time because I think there might have been complaints from parents being like, "This is not a daytime cartoon," because it was really weird and more grotesque than children's television at the time was. And it was scary. And they had I would say it was like Cartoon Network's version of what thrilling, horrific television could be for children without going over the line.
Yeah, it's interesting to think now where the line actually is, because that would absolutely be over the line in today's day and age. Obviously, you see all the entertaining programs that kids would watch today, like Paw Patrol or stuff like that. No way would you see that kind of thing on kids' television today. So it's really interesting looking back now. I say I was obsessed with it as a kid, and I was, but I wouldn't want my own kids or anyone to be obsessed with it because it's so dark.
Yeah, I feel like Disney kind of did that a few years ago with that show Gravity Falls. Did you guys ever watch that show?
Yes.
It was like a kids show, but not really. I remember I watched it with my nephew and we both like loved it. But it's so funny to look back that now I feel like mostly adults watch that show, Gravity Falls, because it had such mature themes and like, I mean, not super mature, you know what I mean? But some of the things that they did and talked about in that show, I know they went way above my 4-year-old nephew's head when he was watching it at the time. He just liked the pig.
Yeah, if it was like if Disney had a teen Disney section, it probably would have aired in that time slot the same way that like older skewing Nickelodeon shows would air on Teen Nick when that was a thing.
Teen Nick.
Yes. With like Victorious and other ones are escaping me right now because I started aging out of programming by the time they really started doing that.
Yeah. I was gonna bring up All That. That was another show that
Fun.
I never missed growing up. And also Keenan and Kel was another one that I really loved on Nickelodeon. I don't remember it now.
Orange Show though.
The show was so like dramatic and out there, but it was so fun.
They don't really do sketch comedy shows for kids anymore. I know they revived or rebooted All That, and it didn't really last that long. It was a 90s thing that really worked then. And now they don't really do that with kids. Like with The Amanda Show was also funny. I loved The Amanda Show.
Oh, I love that show too. I loved Amanda Bynes.
She was so good. So funny. Funniest one of the funniest ones on the shows.
Yeah. And on All That, I think that she's the reason why I loved All That, because when she did that, what was the sketch she did? It was like Ask Ashley.
Yes.
She was like on her bed and like taking questions and giving the worst advice.
Yes, and she'd be like, "That's me." It was the funniest thing she had done.
Oh, of course. Did you guys get All That over there, Michael? I'm gonna keep asking you about this.
Oh, please do.
This line of questioning.
I don't know if I have all of the answers, but I don't remember it being on TV. I will say that. There's a lot of programs you have mentioned now. I'm like, oh, yeah, we had that and we had that. But I have to say that's one I don't remember. Obviously, I'm aware of the stars it would come from, those programs like Victorious and Amanda Bynes, of course. But I don't remember that program being on. But I will say, kind of like how you weren't the Cartoon Network kid. There was a lot of that stuff that a lot of my generation did talk about as well. Some stuff on Nickelodeon and Teen Nick as well that I'd never read. I think I kind of missed it. A lot of people who were slightly older than me would talk about stuff, and a lot of people who were slightly younger than me would talk about that stuff. But I was just busy watching Cartoon Network.
Or wrestling. It could have been like, depending on when the time slot was, wrestling might have been on.
Yes, I forgot to mention that. Yes. I kind of missed that. My brothers grew up in the era of wrestling. And then when I started watching, and none of my friends talked about it, and I was like left out in the cold. But I had my twin brother, so it's all right. But like definitely another formative. Can you call it a TV show? It's probably basically a long-running soap.
Yeah. Not a soap.
But like a formative for me, without a doubt. When I was 6 years old, I was moaning about The Undertaker and Ken. When I was 26 years old, I was moaning about The Undertaker and Ken. So it stayed with me my whole life. It's funny. It was kind of bigger back in the day, back in the old WWF,
It
Hulk
was.
Hogan, Stone Cold, The Undertaker days. Whereas nowadays, other than like John Cena and the likes of The Undertaker, you don't really have those big household names. Like if I went up to a randomer and said, name me a modern day WWE superstar, they probably couldn't. Whereas 20 years ago, you had Hulk Hogan, The Rock, The Undertaker, Kane, all of them. Whereas it's just, I feel like that's just a product of its time. And of course, it'll last forever. But it was the good old days of the WWF. Oh, you can't beat them.
Wrestling was so popular when we were kids. It feels like it was on a lot of channels, or maybe we just like kept seeing commercials for it and it felt like it was everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
But now it seems like UFC kind of took over.
Yeah,
wrestling was so popular.
And I'm trying to think of like children even
sports.
talk about it. But like it was theater too, right? Like, so you couldn't escape the playground without someone, regardless of gender, getting on the slide, jumping off it, and like doing whoever their favorite wrestler's speech was, and like throwing wood chips as they like as everyone else is like applauding from the side and doing the sound for the crowd. Because I mean, it was so much fun to pretend to be your favorite wrestler, and of course then like play fight, but also be aware of like the teacher standing to the side, so none of them think you're actually fighting with anybody. Yeah, like, don't get in our way, we're having fun.
Exactly, and that's it. A lot of people used to ask me when I was younger, why do you watch that? It's rehearsed, or what's the fun in watching people batter each other? I'm like, no, I watched it for the theater of it. I think I love that word. I definitely watched it for the theater of it. If it was just two people, two nobodies tearing each other apart, there's no fun in that. But like, you're watching like an undead zombie battle his flame throwing brother, like you can't, it's like a TV show. You can't beat that stuff. So I watched it for the theatrics. My favorite wrestlers were always the more supernatural theatrical ones. And I think as the program's getting more realistic in today's day and age, it's more boring. Of course, the wrestling itself is amazing, but it's not as fun as it used to be. So I can see why in the late 90s, when you had all those comic book animated shows, that you had all those like over the top 90s programming, why something like wrestling really would take off. And that era you mentioned was called the Attitude Era. Everybody was watching it between 1997 and 2001. It was after that it started dropping off again. But just that period for wrestling, that period for like theater entertainment, or what do they call it? Sports entertainment, was just what a time to be alive. And I'm so glad I grew up in that era, because I don't think I'd be the fan of it I am now if I grew up with it today.
That reminds me of also like reality television. Like we grew up with like the start of reality television, not just like the game shows, but also just like the reality shows, like the Osbournes and Newlyweds, and the shows that I loved, which were Laguna Beach and The Hills, which were so fabricated, but so addicting. And I watched every episode. But like even today, getting into a little bit how television has changed, reality television is so different. Like now it's not just people being filmed, it's people being aware of what could happen if they go on a reality show. They can gain like followers, and then suddenly they have a job on Instagram. Not to knock that hustle, but it's just something that I noticed even on Big Brother, a show that I've watched for 20 years. Now there's people on there that see like, oh, these house guests can get thousands of followers on Instagram, and then they can, make money off of that. And it just kind of waters down the reality television entertainment, because back in the day I'm watching these 4 girls in Los Angeles fight with each other in nightclubs, and it was just perfect television. But nowadays, like, it's so different. Like all those MTV reality shows, like I can't even get into them. And maybe that just comes with age too, that like I aged out of being able to watch that kind of stuff.
Well, there were also like tiers to the reality TV game. Like there was the Wild West of it, where the producers didn't get involved at all, and you would see people's entire lives be destroyed and blown up, and then like on the Real World, and then like
Real World.
It's so intense. Back in the day, it was massively intense. The way
I should not have been 9 years old watching that show.
And it was really real. It's like you would sneak it on and you'd watch and you'd be like, oh my God, like everything is happening like this. And there were back then, the drama didn't necessarily feel as fabricated. Like, of course, you get the like behind the scenes stories where the cast would tell you, producers would egg them on when they'd have altercations. But now producers don't even need to egg you on, because so-and-so is going to fight with someone else because they know their followers are watching and they want that follower account bumped. or they want to like make sure that they're shouting out somebody because if the producers may not know, but they have a partnership with someone or they've been guaranteed money for something. And it's like, it's so different in the way it used to be. But I will say, back in the day, we did get things like My Super Sweet 16, which probably should never have been on air. But it was flawless, chaotic television.
That actually, I do want to ask you guys something now, and Reed, it's the same line of questioning. Is reality television still as big over there now as it was when you guys were growing up or when you guys were in your early 20s? Is it still the same now, or has it kind of like fallen off?
It's kind of different now. There's not as many reality shows that's like documentary style that follows like some famous person around through their life. It's all very, I mean, we still have The Bachelor, we still have The Bachelorette, we have all those like game shows and competition series, but there's really nothing. I mean, maybe the Kardashians.
Yeah, but everything's like a franchise now. Like you have like 8 different versions of the Real Housewives.
Selling Sunset and like, yeah. It's not the same. It's all very, or it feels, I don't want to say, because I don't really watch any of these shows, but it just all feels very produced.
And packaged. Like they knew what they wanted to do. I felt like that way about the, is it the Bling Empire? On Netflix, and I was like, this is not given like what I remember The Hills giving and Laguna Beach given, and I was like into it. I didn't finish actually season 1. I was into it, but I was like, these people are very aware they're on a reality TV show though. Like it'd been fine if it was actually scripted, it'd been fine.
There's too much like maybe too much self-awareness that they know what they're doing. I don't know.
It's interesting because over here I feel like we had that big reality television wave when the likes of Big Brother were on, and that kind of like, oh, you could never find a bigger reality show than that. And then obviously it was Celebrity Big Brother, and then Big Brother moved around networks. It was a mess. But then nowadays you see like maybe 1 or 2 of these reality shows and they're like the next big thing, and maybe if they're lucky they'll pull in 1 million viewers or 2 million viewers, but people don't tune into it the way they used to. The only exception is Love Island, not my thing, but like apparently it draws really well. They have 2 seasons off it now a year because it draws so well for ITV. But I feel like the reality television kind of took a turn about 12, 13 years ago when talent shows started, because the X Factor was the be all and end all over here for about 6 or 7 years of its run. And every type of reality TV tried to compete with that and couldn't. And you had the prime years of the X Factor that produced the likes of Leona Lewis, One Direction, Alexander Burke, all them ones. Little Mix, of course. I feel like they just fell outside the prime of the X Factor, and then they revived it for a year or 2 after that.
Oh, those girls always, they're the blueprint.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have to say, I remember watching them, and that was one of my favorite series. It felt like the comeback series because the show had kind of died off for seasons.
Okay, since we're bringing this up, I just all of our listeners to know that I feel so deeply jealous of Michael. Every time we bring up Little Mix and he says that he watched them on X Factor, there's a part inside of me that is so just jealous.
I'll tell you about it in explicit detail later. And I went to that year's tour, so I saw them perform live. I will throw that in there. Sorry.
I saw their last show from the comfort of my couch.
I mean, I could have done that too, but
on a dodgy live stream.
Dodgy live stream. Welcome to my world. But yeah, no, there were a lot of talent shows that they were kind of the comeback year of the X Factor, and then it just fell off the face of the earth after that. And it ran for about 6 more years and then died a slow, painful death with everyone like, how much longer does it have to be on for? The only thing reality that kind of brings the viewers in now, and the funny thing is it's been one of the longest running one, is Strictly Come Dancing, which is your version of Dancing with the Stars. We started it over here. Ours is the first series. That's why it's the only one with the name Strictly Come Dancing, whereas it's Dancing with the Stars everywhere else in the world.
I like that title better.
Yeah, me too. We always have to tune into Strictly on a Saturday night.
It's fancier.
And it brings in like 11 to 12 million viewers a night. It used to lose to the X Factor, and then the X Factor started losing to it. And even now, years after the X Factor's gone, it still brings in 11 to 12 million viewers every Saturday night. Nothing over here can touch Strictly on a Saturday in the winter. nothing. And anytime someone mentions reality TV to me, that's instantly the first thing I think of. And it probably gives it a much classier reputation because reality TV isn't considered classy, but strictly is like good old fashioned night of entertainment, ballroom dancing. You can't get better entertainment than that. And I think that's why it continues to be the be all and end all of Saturday night TV in the UK. And even now it feels relevant because I did grow up watching it, but I was never really a fan of it until like the last 6 or 7 years because it feels like the last survivor of that generation of reality TV. And even now, nothing can touch it.
I can't think of anything that we have that, with maybe the exception to Big Brother, where nothing can touch it. Oh, and I guess The Bachelor. I don't know. I just think that that too.
It's
I
been
don't
on
know.
for like a million years.
It has, and so has Amazing Race, but like my mind doesn't immediately go to it. And that might just be because I'm not a Survivor person. In fact, sometimes I forget it's on until, you see the tribal council and the tikis, and they start telling you once again that they're back. And I'm like, no one's tired of being stranded on islands? No one.
We have like The Voice and American Idol, which is back, but I feel like they don't have the impact that at least American Idol doesn't have the impact that it used to. I watch it because I love Katy Perry, but it's not creating like Kelly Clarkson's anymore. And then like The Voice, there's always that that commentary that no one can name a winner from that show. I can't in this moment.
No.
It just seems like it's more about the judges, but it's popular, I guess. I try to tune into that show specifically for the judges that I like, but I never usually stick with it. I did watch the American X Factor though.
Was it good?
Thoughts?
I think
no.
Was there a season before the one that Brittany was on? That's probably a horrible question to ask.
There was one that went through like a few judges, didn't they? Because Simon Cowell started with like Cheryl, who was big over here, and then he got rid of her like early on. And then she was replaced by 1 or 2 judges. I can't remember.
Yeah, I watched the season with Brittany and Demi Lovato, and then there was another season, I think, with Demi and Kelly Rowland. And then I think after that it was canceled.
That's wild that it didn't like it came over there when it was in its peak over here. And it's kind of funny how the audience didn't translate because maybe it just couldn't compete with American Idol.
Yeah, we got Fifth Harmony and they were like, I think that's as good as we're gonna get, and they just stopped making the show.
Ugh. That would never have happened over here because, like, look how long it went on for.
I mean, maybe it'll come back. American Idol came back after like a 2-year hiatus.
I know, but it's like no, but it's like it's just a legacy title that they have now. Because, like you said, no one is who's popping on American Idol that we're like aware of in the mainstream, and perhaps we just have too many singing contests or contests in general. Because like there's American Idol, there's The Voice, there's America's Got Talent, which I think people forget about. Which I don't remember if they finished or if they're currently on right now. I can't name you a single winner off of there either.
I think that's on Netflix over here, so I didn't even know that was still going
America's
on
Got
until
Talent?
until I was on Netflix and then just seen it advertised.
That's interesting.
It is like what gets acquired and what does not. America's Got Talent would have been one I thought would have arrived at Netflix UK.
No, talent. I don't think talent shows should be on streamers at all. It doesn't work.
No.
Speaking of Dancing with the Stars.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking of.
That change is going to be interesting. I wonder if the Disney Plus bump, if it gets a Disney Plus bump, what that will be like for everybody involved.
Is it still airing on was it ABC? Is it still airing on TV or is it just moving completely to streaming now?
I want to say it's full streaming. Like they just hopped platforms, which could make or break it. Yeah. We'll see.
People then have to make an effort to tune in instead of flicking it on. I don't know whether that'll work.
It's interesting to see how it's changed because I feel like in its heyday that show was probably pulling like 20 million viewers a week, just like in that era of ABC where like you had Grey's and Lost and Desperate Housewives all pulling like 20 million viewers a week, and now that is a number that's so unheard of. 20 million viewers a week? No, it doesn't happen anymore.
It doesn't, and I think broadcast is still trying to adjust. I'm going to stop myself from going on a tangent, but I really just think it's because we're living in the peak TV age and there's just far too much programming all happening at the same on the same times, all on different networks. Some of them, and then you have like streaming dropping stuff too. So like, yeah, great, so and so, such and such show, this new show's dropping on broadcast, but all episodes of this one series I've been waiting a long time for just dropped on Netflix. So no, I will not be turning into the premiere and probably will not be tuning in next week. And so I'll catch up with you on episode 3. Oh, but you canceled the show halfway through the season. I guess I won't be catching up now.
It's funny. I think the idea of broadcast TV is going out of fashion because we're getting more streaming shows. It'll never be fully out of fashion because at the end of the day, the people you want to appeal to are the ones that sit down at the end of the night and flick on the TV, and they might not make the effort to flick on a streaming service. So there'll always be something on broadcast TV, but it is interesting to see how it changed. And to use another example that I grew up with, the British soaps, they're still legendary. They're some of the longest running soaps you'll ever say, but are you know, the way your daytime soaps would run during the day, but they're like the long running ones, and then your prime time soaps would be considered like Gossip Girl or Dynasty or whatever, which are basically just TV shows. Over here, prime time soaps are like the daytime ones or the long running ones that have been running for 30, 40 years or whatever. They produce episodes every night. EastEnders, and then when it was first on in 1985, I think one of the Christmas episodes drew 30 million viewers. But on average, EastEnders would have drawn between 21 to 10 million viewers in its first 15 years. Now it draws like 1.9 or 2.1, and they're still solid numbers. But I just think that goes to show you how little people are actually tuning into television on the night anymore. There's just far too much selection these days. And when you have things like wrestling, like soaps that have been on for years and they require you to have tuned into previously to understand what's going on currently, a lot of people just won't make that commitment when it's far easier to binge watch 8 episodes of a new TV series on Netflix instead.
That's true. But just to make a case for soap operas, you can just drop into them, y'all. You'll figure it out. Like, for instance, I have a love-hate relationship with The Bold and the Beautiful. I've been watching it since I was a preteen, and many of the storylines are cyclical, but that's the nature of soap operas. Mm-hmm. And you don't need to know what Eric Forster was doing in 1986 with whoever. It's fine. They might reference it. There might even be a child that is now grown that was involved. You'll figure it out. Not to mention they change storylines all the time. Like so-and-so will be like, they mysteriously passed away like 10 years ago, but now they're back and they were never dead.
Oh yeah. That's like our British soaps all over, yeah.
Yeah, and then when they come back, like the backstories usually changed. And so you'll just like those of us who remember, which like, she didn't come from an island in Nantucket or something. She came from such and such. And she doesn't have a child, but now she does have a child. And you're just like, just go with it. Yeah, just watch it. Because the fun is the silliness. It's the it's the legacy bits of it. It's yelling at the TV because so-and-so should be like 50 something, but they recasted them and now we're at 30 because they need someone to go with go with one of the 30-year-olds. Like, it's ridiculous and it's lovely, and like just tune into it. You do not have to know all 40 years, or in some cases like 70 years of a story to watch it.
I feel like the daytime soaps, they have a slower pace, because I remember my mom watched all the soaps when I was a kid because they were like so popular when we were a kid, like the daytime soaps. And I feel like I would always like see the TV and the characters would be like in the same room, in the same outfits, having the same argument.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, okay. And there's this great joke in The Nanny, which is another show that is one of my first favorites and has been really influential to me, that I still watch all the time. Where in that show, really, it's a sitcom, but that show really tapped into the soap culture and made soaps seem like they were like the biggest thing in the world, which they kind of were. But that's something that's really important to the character in The Nanny. But there's this joke where she's watching a soap and someone sits down and watches it with her who's never seen it. And the other person is like, oh, I'm never going to be able to like catch up or know what's happening. And Fran goes, oh, honey, you'll be lucky if the coffee she's making is done next week. It's like so true, like, because those shows, like, they move a little bit slower, even though there's always so much going on.
Yeah, I think that's what I think a lot of this generation sometimes struggles with commitment, because you can binge watch something. I think that was why soaps thrived back in the day when there was less competition, because you would stick with things, you would follow through on the obsessive characters and the ridiculous storylines. And It's funny, I don't know if you guys heard, but the classic Australian soap Neighbours recently ended. It shouldn't have ended, but Neighbours has produced some of the biggest stars in the world. Margot Robbie was one of them. Kylie Minogue was one of them. Eliza Taylor and Bob Morley from The 100, they were two of them. So Neighbours has just given the world so much great stars over the years. But it recently ended after 37 years because one of their networks decided to pull funding, and that was it. It was still very popular, but that's a shame. But when it was announced that Margot Robbie sent the cast 37 bottles of wine to celebrate their 37 years on the air, someone commented underneath, Margot, I love you, but I'm not tuning into 37 seasons of a TV show. That's not how soaps work.
But like, their soaps don't even stream full seasons anywhere, do they?
They don't. It's really hard to find them.
It's like really a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing. You just gotta hop on the train or stay off of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's sometimes why they struggle to survive in today's day and age, because, well, we're in the HBO Max era now, so that's not necessarily a good example. But before this HBO Max drama started of things being snapped out of existence, soaps were the only place that didn't, or the only show that didn't really have a place to go. Every TV show would wind up on some streaming service or a DVD at the very least, or iTunes or somewhere like that. Whereas soaps aren't stored anywhere, so people wouldn't be tuning into the old episodes or anything. So it was very, very hard to find them. So in this era where everything's immortal, it still felt like soaps weren't. So maybe that's why a lot of them haven't survived this current era.
That's another thing that's changed in this new era of television, is that we're watching more shows from start to finish, and people are less likely to watch a show if they can't watch it from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I remember growing up, like, I started watching Friends, which is another show that's really one of my first favorites. I just started, I hopped in on TBS reruns like halfway into the show. And then I eventually did watch it from the beginning, but like I didn't need to start at season 1 to just like hop into the show. Did I know what was going on? No, I was also 12 and had no idea what was going on anyway. But like I could just like hop into, and it's a sitcom, that helps, but you can just like hop into any show. You guys know, I love watching a show out of context. I will watch any episode. It doesn't matter. I don't care. And maybe that's just from the time we grew up in, where you could go on any channel and any episode of any show would be on and you would just watch it randomly. So I feel like with streaming, it's a pro that people are watching complete stories instead of just like hopping in season 5. I think that's beneficial to like the creator's vision to see the full thing. But I also think I miss like just like waking up on a Saturday morning and turning on MTV and being like, oh, I'll just watch this random episode of Laguna Beach for the 8th time.
You know, I get that, because I remember sitcoms used to do, a lot of sitcoms you could do that with. You just pop into the middle of it and you'd fall in love with it instantly, but you wouldn't need the backstory. Whereas nowadays, obviously, people do start from the beginning.
Yeah, the writing, and this might not be true, but it's a feeling that I have, where obviously back in the day, people were writing to make complete stories, but there was also the knowledge that people would be starting in the middle of a season. Yeah. So you might have something that happened 30 episodes ago because we're bringing it back into the storyline. Where now, with the way that television is streamlined, unless you're talking about procedurals, you really do have to know what's happening if you want to enjoy the story. And that was not the case when we were kids. You would just, you would hop in, you would go, someone would tell you what was happening maybe 5 episodes later and you'd be fine. And there's more complete storytelling now than there previously was. And just to be honest, sometimes you don't need to see the first season of a television show. Sometimes it's just about the arcs someone's in. That's the thing about soap operas. You don't need to see the beginning. You need to see certain arcs, and hopefully someone had it on a VHS tape because they don't sell DVDs. So
oh my God, VHS tapes. I'm gonna go on a little side story here. Growing up, I had this TV that had a built-in VCR.
Ah, yes.
And you could schedule recordings on it. Like I could put the tape in and like go through the settings, and like if I was gonna be at like whatever school event at night and I was like, I don't want to miss Unfabulous, I could schedule on my TV to record it on the VHS. I thought it was the most revolutionary thing in the world. I had a DVR before the DVR was a thing. I miss that TV.
Yeah, we did the exact same thing. You're having a moment there, right?
I know, like I missed that. It was so cool. I thought it was the best thing in the world that I could schedule recordings on a tape.
It was the best thing in the world.
We did the exact same thing. Our brothers used to record the wrestling. So it would be the pay-per-views on Sunday night, Raw on Monday night, and then SmackDown on Friday night. And then when I got started getting obsessed with it, I was like, no, we need to keep this episode of SmackDown new video. And then it would be a new VHS and a new VHS and new VHS. But we had a TV that you could also schedule recording on it. So yeah, oh man, that woke up a memory for me too.
And then the fear that like someone would pop the tape out because they weren't paying attention, or like you said, having to put in a new video because you're like, okay, this says it has 6 hours on it. I know we've recorded 3 hours of something. We're gonna grab another VHS tape because I refuse to let it pop out and I'm not home to change it.
And you could record a long play or short play, and one of them wasn't as good quality as the other. And if you recorded over it too many times, it would get worse quality. And like, okay, guys, we need to change the VHS now.
Or the blue screen of death because you watch something too much.
Yes.
And so like one, like maybe 15 minutes of a VHS tape that you recorded is just blue and you have to fast forward because you watched one scene too many times.
I did that with an episode of Batman the Animated Series, and then I tried to eject the video and the tape came out, but the actual like tape got stuck in the machine, so you had to the video was gone after that.
Oh no.
Sad times. We were struggling sometimes with
the technology we had just was not up to scratch.
Just to date ourselves some more, do you remember the dial-up internet and then having to get off if someone needed to make a phone call?
Yes.
That was everything.
I remember once my dad was on the phone to my nanny and I started connecting to the internet via the dial-up, and I could hear the actual conversation on my computer because it was crossing over with the lines. It was like, okay, disconnected.
Oh my God, what a time.
I'm being yelled at to get off. Like, you've been on there for 2 hours. Are you done? Like, I just have to color one more part of Sailor Moon's dress and then I'll be off.
I would just be like doing nothing. I would be on like AOL Instant Messenger and like reading Wikipedia pages. That was like what I did when I was in middle school.
Oh man.
Good times. And there were less internet pages too, so there was less trouble there was less of a dark turn to take on the internet than there is now. Now there's just an endless rabbit hole and you have to pull yourself back out of it.
Yeah, it was so much more innocent. Like every singer had a website that I would like just go on and check regularly because they actually used it for like fun things and not just promotion. And like the Disney Channel show games were just chef's kiss, the best games on the internet. I don't consider myself a gamer, but I was in the Disney Channel era.
I think all 90s kids are a little bit of gamers simply because there was so much game culture in everything. Like a lot of the shows had to have a side game, like all the kids network shows had to like come to the games area of Nickelodeon, like Nick.com and CartoonNetwork.com, and they'd be on like the little flash player and be like 5 minutes, but you'd spend like an hour playing the same game over and over and over again.
Oh, they were the best. There was a Kim Possible one that I loved. It was like the mole rat. What's his name? Rufus. He was like building like nachos or something. I would play that for hours.
Oh, you'd have to stack it, right? It would move and the nacho would drop.
Yeah.
The nostalgia. This pod episode warms my heart so much.
It was so fun. It's a good change from the past few weeks of the dense CW news, and it just felt like an Armageddon.
Yeah, we needed to unwind after everything that put us through.
Yes, and we're just gonna ignore WBD for now because
yeah
they're in timeout.
Yeah,
they are in timeout,
ignoring everything they do. Yeah,
they're in Tommy's playpen with no Reptar and no building blocks.
I understood that reference.
Okay, but we do have to move forward to what we're watching, but we're still in a nostalgic sort of vibe because Reed, you have a Dynasty addendum.
I do. I forgot so much about last week's episode to include, and it was really big stuff. So it only feels right to circle back. We've all been kind of crossing our fingers for like some sort of victorious reunion on Dynasty. We're pulling for Ariana, whose sweater I'm wearing today. If you're watching, it's her Sweetener album cover. Anyway, it was not Ariana yet. We'll keep manifesting. It was Matt Bennett, who is really close friends with Liz still, and he popped up during the Bachelor auction, and it completely slipped my mind because I was shook when it happened because no one, to my knowledge, announced it. So I was like, Matt Bennett. It was a really sweet moment for Liz to get her friend in right in the end. But beyond that fun cameo, I also forgot about everything that was going on with Adam. I'm sorry, guys. It's a lot. He's been working on this like injectable thing. It's some sort of like cosmetic thing. I don't know why he's allowed to develop something that people can put in their faces, but I mean, it's Dynasty. So he found out that the formula was like harming people. I don't know if people were actually dying or if that was like the trajectory of what this injectable was going to do. And he was being investigated by the FDA. And he was working on this with Alexis. It's her brand, I want to say. And she finds out that he's kind of like teaming up with Blake to get out of this mess. And like Blake's helping him, which is a big deal because Adam and Blake have a rocky relationship, which Michael, you can attest to.
Oh, yeah.
And so Blake is like, of course, I'll help you, which is, again, shocking. But it's heartwarming to Adam. I hate to see him win, but I was like, he really needs that validation from his father. So Blake helps him. But in the end, Alexis pulls up on Adam in Blake's office with DEA agents. And it was one of the wildest things. Like, she's just like flanked by DEA agents. I'm like, how is Alexis doing this? But it was really funny. And again, I keep saying this, but it's really going to be interesting to see how all this shakes up in the final 3 episodes. Like, is Adam going to go to prison? I don't know. He deserves it anyway. There's also Dominique might be getting a love interest in the run-up of the series finale. She hasn't really ever had like a romance besides like her little fling with Colhane, spoiler alert. But now that she's like a big fashion designer and has like a line that she shows on TV on their version of, what's that station called where they have the people?
Bravo?
No, where they like sell clothes and stuff.
Oh, it's like right there. I know what you mean.
HSN.
Okay, yeah,
But it's Fallon's shopping network. I think it's called FSN or something. I don't know.
Yes.
But
where I am currently, they're just threading that needle thread.
Okay, cool. So yeah, Dom has a successful. I think she just launched a line for like flight attendants. It's really random. But she has a stalker, so she needed to get security, and there's some fireworks with her bodyguard. Even though I'm still like don't trust the bodyguard because again, it's Dynasty. Like, is he the stalker? We'll find out, but it was really exciting. And that's my Dynasty addendum. All the stuff I forgot.
So much is happening on Dynasty. Still, again, I say, what other soap operas are doing it like Dynasty?
Right.
None. 0 primetime soaps.
I wonder if Adam will go to jail. But like you said, no one stays in jail long. But perhaps he'll just be carried away in the finale, saying like, remember me. And that'll be the end of him.
I mean, I don't want to give away the spoiler for any fans, but there's a certain character that's coming back in the series finale, we found out. So I think some stuff's going to hit the fan.
Long overdue.
It has to. Yeah.
Then we want some explosions. I mean, they like, if there's any like CW show, I think that really, with maybe exception to Batwoman, that really used the end of their journey on the CW well, it seems like it was Dynasty.
Yeah. I know earlier on in the podcast, I was sort of like, I can't see the end game from where we are. This doesn't feel like where it should end. Not in sort of like a fan, like I'm going to hold on to this until forever. It was just, I couldn't really see how this show would plot toward an end game because it's such a primetime soap. It's like you don't expect things to all be wrapped up in a bow. It doesn't need to have that like perfect happy ending because all these characters are not great people. So you're like, it was hard for me to see them just like so quickly have to flip the switch to like, we need to bring the show to an end. But now that it is getting there, it's still the same show that it was. Like they're still doing like one-off stories about Fallon feuding with rich women and all that kind of stuff. But it does feel like you said, Sabrina, they're using their time wisely and they're doing really good character work, I would say. And bringing back loose threads that are like, oh, we need to deal with Adam being a low-key criminal for 3 seasons.
And they got additional episodes, right? They got an episode account bump
It's just
after
22.
everything.
It's
No,
just
man, that
22.
did they have 22 episodes? They knew they were getting that going in, or did they get
Yeah.
additional episodes? Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was always 22.
Oh, well, good for them.
Yeah.
Honestly.
The largest order on the CW, I think.
Ooh.
That
Next to
deserved one
Riverdale.
time.
Next
Yeah.
to Riverdale.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Well-
International for that.
Okay. So update on the Nancy Drew situation for like, I'm gonna hold off on the Nick and Nancy part, but I have to say I had so much fun watching this episode. Episode 6 is a ride, and I enjoyed it.
I remembered this episode just visually. I knew there was an episode coming up from when I first watched it in 2019 of this house party and all those like lights and that like the glamour of it. I had that in my mind and I was like, when does this episode come up? And I remember not liking it when I first watched it, but on the second watch, it is an episode.
It is. It's so much fun. I think they really leaned heavily into the rich people are weird and they do criminal things all the time trope, and like the way that it's both funny and not funny, which is something that Nancy Drew does really well. Like they do sort of like make lighthearted jokes about some of the rich people situations in Horseshoe Bay, but at the same time they do take it seriously that, hey, so it's possible that one of these families offed somebody else and are trying to hide it. But it also involves Roman coins from a ship that's sunk into the bottom of the ocean called the Bonnie Scott? Just so it can be a little bit ridiculous.
He's doing it like Nancy Drew, like honestly. No, I remember seeing photos of this episode. I don't know whether it was years ago or recently. I remember this episode visually, and I have to say it was a lot of fun. And no, I do agree with you. It was very much like kind of both tones. It was like, would you see what rich people get up to? And then on the same side, wait a minute, is that what rich people get up to? So it had like a mixture of tones. But I think it was also one of the most important as far as answers go. We did learn a lot about the Lucy Sable situation, how it happened, and that there's more to it, particularly isn't involving Nancy's father, perhaps, than we initially thought. So, I really liked it.
Yeah, her dad was not in the episode, and yet he played a very large part in the episode, as we come to find out
towards the end. And it's just like, so he was the lawyer that handled everything, which is something that I believe Ryan had said earlier in the season, but I did not know to the degree in which he handled things for the Hudsons.
Yeah,
it's a yikes situation. And Nancy keeps thinking that like her dad's safe, it's fine, and then someone comes to pop her bubble and to let her know things are kind of shady actually about 20 years ago.
Yeah, the call's coming from inside the house, Nancy.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the father has been portrayed as kind of like a morally gray area for a character right from the beginning, but that was always through Nancy's eyes. You thought he was still a good man doing what he could to look after his daughter, even though he was quite flawed. Whereas now this episode, and there was another one as well, this episode's definitely cast a lot of doubt on what kind of character is he. And like Reed said, that's quite impressive that it managed to do that, considering he wasn't even in the episode.
It's very ominous now. Like I feel uncomfortable about her father. Like I want to give him the benefit of the doubt because I'm Team Nancy and I want everything to be okay. But at the same time, it feels very much like how Ryan was reacting to, well, specifically his mom and the way that she handled things. And it's a reminder that like there are things that your parents did in the past that you might not be so happy about if you were aware of it. And in Ryan's cases, like something's funky about what went down with his mom and Lucy, because Lucy caught her cheating on her husband, which she's like, you're in trouble. I was like, no, ma'am, you're in trouble.
Wait, Ryan doesn't know yet, right? He doesn't, but Nancy does because she put it all together. It's interesting. I feel like this episode did a whole lot with Ryan kind of like deconstructing him a little bit and shining a different light on him as far as the viewers are concerned. But I'm always wary of that when shows do that. We're like, for like the first few episodes, they're like the villain, and then they're like there's more to this guy than you thought. And I'm like, I'm not going to be fully on board yet. Like, I see what you're putting down, but I'm not going to pick it up just yet.
Yeah, because there's like teen him is not adult him. And while I do feel bad about like what his parents did to his relationship with Lucy and how he didn't have any control in the situation. And then to find out the girl that you really liked was murdered can be really rough. But it's been 20 years, sir, and there's 20 years of stuff that you've done in the past. So I feel sorry for 17-year-old you. Late 30s, early 40s, something you, no.
Yeah.
No, you go ahead, Michael. I
Sure.
was going to bring up something else.
No, yeah, I totally get what you're saying. I agree with that. And I really like that. That, yeah, he's also kind of like this morally grey character. And yeah, he's not the villain of the story, but that doesn't mean he's the hero of the story either. There's definitely more to him. And I think that's instantly made him a more interesting character because, yes, he had a lot of this like surface level arrogant nature about him that made him an obvious target. And I knew going into it that meant he definitely wasn't the villain here. But now you're starting to see that he also has his own things that make him a bit of a victim as far as the way his parents treated him, as far as the way his parents, who his parents are and the world he was brought into. Does that make him a hero? Does that make him a likable character? No, but it does make him a very interesting one. And I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of role he plays in the story going forward, now that he may still be at the center of it, but he's not directly responsible for it.
Yeah, and now he's also being haunted by Lucy Sable. And that's a connection that Nancy now has with him, which before she didn't see him as anything other than like this rich guy who probably killed his wife. And now she's like, hold on, he's being haunted by this ghost too. Also, this is what I was going to bring up before. The motif of Lucy like burning his ring into his finger. I thought was a very interesting, like, I haven't even unpacked what that could all mean. Maybe I'm looking too far into it, but I thought it was a really, oh my God, it was such an interesting visual and also a really good thematic element because, like, it ties into his wife, right? So she's like burning his ring. So Nancy can see it and be like, oh, there's something here that's connecting all of this. I thought it was all well done with the burning ring. And then her kicking it into the puddle, I thought was really funny too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like is she like I wondered like is she vengeful because she did love him and he moved on? Is it that like you whatever has happened within two important women in your life have suffered similar fates? Like connect the dots to how you are involved with this, Ryan. Like because Lucy might be like, look, like there's me and then there's your wife. Like wake up. Something's not right.
She left that message in the ring, the new inscription, where like the Lucy's death led to Tiffany's death. But even where we are now, and we know like what happened with Ryan's parents, it feels like we can kind of like piece together, like, oh, this kind of led to this somehow. But I know that it's not going to be that simple. There's no way. Because I was thinking about the episode, and I was like, oh, okay, I got it. And then I'm like, no, wait, hold on. It's never that easy.
But it does have something to do with the Marvins and this Hudson Marvin clash. That like they were business partners. The Bonnie Scott sunk. The patriarch of the Marvins passed away. He was cheating with Ryan's mom. Like something is clearly not right between these two families. And Owen was going to use the coins to prove that I guess the Hudsons made sure the ship would fail because of I think that's his uncle. I was like, so, but you're accusing the Hudsons of being willing to kill not just your uncle, but a fleet full of people, not a fleet, sorry, a ship full of people. That's heavy and a lot, and it's a large accusation.
It is, and I think that played really nicely into the episode because everybody wanted the coins for different reasons. And I know we're getting to it, but that really directly impacted the Nick and Nancy conflict as well. It really did.
Shall we get into that?
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let me put my water down so we can get into this. As soon as I saw her, and I think this was earlier in the episode, when she declined that call from Nick, I was like, okay, it's going down. Ship is starting to sink. He feels so insecure in this relationship because she keeps choosing everything else than him, and she's not fully trusting him. And there's just so much to unpack that every scene that I was like, she is so confident in her own skin, and she is so independent that she doesn't think anything of declining is called, at least in my reading, that she's just like, I will get to that. I'm focused on this. But he sees things like her putting her hand on Owen's arm, or like he sees how she's acting at that party, and he's just, there's such a big gulf between them that sort of is of Nancy's making. And oh my God, this relationship, I could talk about this relationship for hours because it's so fascinating to me.
It's one of the most hurtful relationships I've seen.
Sabrina's feelings are hurt.
Yes, but I think it's because they would work really well as a couple if Nancy were in a position to be a we, and she's just not. She wants to be. You could tell that, like, when she's actually with Nick, she's with Nick. But when she has to go off to do her investigating, as George points out, she's relentless. Like, she's relentlessly about digging up the truth, and she will do whatever she needs to do in order to do that. And like even if it means sidestepping his feelings, for what she needs. Like, so it's very important to him to get to the bottom of what happened to Tiffany. And while that's important to Nancy, Lucy Sable is more important to her. And so that clash, when she was like, I'm not going to give you the coins. And so then they have to go to the party to try to steal the coins. And then later she says something about them being a we at the end. And God bless him. She wasn't even paying attention to the fact that his eyes were red and he was crying. He was like starting to cry. And I was like, Nancy, I think he's trying to break up with you, like, right now. Mm-hmm. And you're not seeing it. And then of course, Owen shows up. And she's like, I'll handle it. And she's handling it. And I'm just like, girl, but handling it would have been sending him on his way after like a 2-minute conversation. You've probably been out here for about 10 minutes. Nick is watching you from the window. You're telling Owen that your heart belongs to Nick, but at the same time, you're rubbing Owen's shoulder with your thumb as you look up into his eyes and don't look away. It's not, the signals are not, you're not giving the right signals. They're mixed signals. And I'm just like, Nick, you don't have to break up with her. I love her. You love her. You're going to have to break up with her for your sanity.
That's it, because the episode really took us on quite the journey. Because when it started, Nick had told her all about how he was trailing Owen, and the two of them knew they were doing that, whereas in the previous episode it was very much left on that cliffhanger that Nick was calling Nancy and saying, be cautious of Owen, and she didn't pick up the phone. So they did have that communicative moment off screen. That did happen. So you thought they were back on track. And then as the episode went on, she kept picking anything but him, which is obviously was highlighted in the phone call. But then obviously, as you said, Reed, that it's like she was literally relentless as far as everything else except Nick. She was choosing everything else but him. And then at the end, when that everything else looked like Owen, you could see that the cracks really started to show. And even though she ultimately didn't choose him in the end, I don't think Nick's heart is in it anymore, because he knows what Nancy's like.
He's stressing.
Their timing is just so deeply off. Like I don't think she's giving him what he was initially looking for. And I think she's just not prepared for that. I think she's still trying to compartmentalize things. She's like, okay, so I have my relationship over here and I'm going to do this stuff on my own here. But even though everybody else wants to join me on these missions, I know that I can do it alone, and I want to do it alone because I need to put some walls up. And that's just not beneficial to a new relationship. And I also thought I thought they were planting the seed of George and Nick.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a seed. It was like a fully bloomed flower that they then like repotted into a garden. Like, it was not a seed. I was I was like, oh, they're looking at each other. They're going to be paired up this episode. And by the end of it, I was like, oh, there's already a connection built here. Because I mean, I knew that these two are at some point get together. And I was always like searching for how. It doesn't seem from where we are that could ever be in my mind a reality. But I know how these shows work. Like, they always just like decide to pair two characters if there's chemistry. But I didn't expect it this soon. Like I'll say it again, it just was not a seed. It was like it was a full plant that they plotted.
And that came out as a surprise to me as well, because George is growing on these people. She's starting to bond with them a lot more. But Nick's one of the ones she hasn't really had that many direct interactions with, and yet all of a sudden she's the one she was getting on the best with. So it does feel like, as you said, it's like a full-blown tree at this point. It's not. It kind of happened overnight. But like the scenes work, the actors work, gave it everything. They were great scenes, and I can absolutely see where it's going now.
Yeah, and I think that the what Nancy Drew does really well is that when they're going to do pairings or people that you're supposed to be paying attention to their relationship with, like they don't tease it, they don't hint at it. We're just kind of there, and not like romantically necessarily, just that like you can see the connection building. There are two things that like, well, no, actually there were three things that like I zeroed in on. Because the show does a really good job of showing, and the actors too, of showing connections. So there's when Nick and Nancy were talking about Nick trailing Owen, and she gets excited when he says that he was stalking him, and then her excitement goes away when he says it's not something for him. And I was like, oh, so that's like a little tiny crack. She doesn't quite like how cautious he is, but she covers it with being a little flirty. And then you have the tension between Nick and Owen when Owen calls him Nicholas, and that's not his name. And she says at the same time Nick does, but then she also watches Owen walk away in front of Nick. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, oh, girl, can we get it together? And then they all see the interaction between Nick and Nancy at the end of the episode. Like literally George and Ace look at him when she's walking away. And I was like, so George has picked up on it. Ace has picked up on it. Nancy, the fractures in your relationship, everybody else is picking up on it. Even Bess, who's distracted with Elizabeth stuff, picked up on it. And you haven't picked up on it yet. That is a warning sign. That's the 5-alarm fire. And she's like, I don't see a blaze. We're fine.
She has tunnel vision for sure.
She does.
I think another thing that I thought was so clever, I guess, about George and Nick interacting in this episode is like we kind of see like she's providing something that is clearly missing from his relationship with Nancy. Not that it's like replaceable or anything, but like he has that like camaraderie with her that he's kind of like he felt with Nancy early on, where they were like together breaking into places and like doing all that together. And she's sort of like, as she gets deeper into this, she's kind of like pulling back and doing more things on her own. We kind of see like where George can like slide in and provide that sort of relationship, that friendship, that togetherness that Nancy's not great at the moment.
I got a question though, and it's the same point that you just made, Reed, which is, do you think in the way that they're writing these two different relationships, it's coming off to me that like George and Nick are having a conversation about like the information they find, and usually Nick and Nancy are relaying information to each other, with one of them being impressed. It doesn't always feel like a conversation. Like she's standing back and impressed by something that he figured out. He's standing back impressed by something that she figured out. But they don't always seem to be together when their discoveries.
I would say on that point, maybe there's a little bit of like a power imbalance in that particular relationship. I can't explain it more than that, but that's how I kind of like see it. Where she kind of we know Nancy's a information gatherer. Mm-hmm. She loves to get information. So I think that's maybe one of her love languages is like, oh, you found that clue.
But I think that's the interesting thing about that relationship. And I think it just says we're really, of all the things and all the conflicts and all the characters in this episode, I think we're now starting to see that it's definitely, I don't want to say that it's not Nancy, it's not Nick, it's Nancy, but it definitely is a problem on Nancy's end, and that she's having a problem connecting, because every good relationship, and maybe today the word friendship sounds a bit weird, but every good relationship has to have like a kinship or a friendship in it for it to work. And Nick and Nancy doesn't seem to have that, just the same way that you see Nancy is having a problem connecting with the other people as friends as well. It's not just Nick she's isolating, it's their entire friendship group, but obviously it's Nick who needs her more because they're actually supposed to be in a relationship. So I think the fact that George and Nick have now established that base friendship before their ultimate relationship. That's why that'll probably ultimately work better. Whereas I know a lot of Nick and Nancy happened off screen, but they never really had that friendship or that kinship to begin with. So she doesn't know how to be a friend to someone. So I think that's why she's struggling to be in a relationship with him.
That's a
see
great
too
point.
that maybe Nancy thinks that by keeping them out of it, she's protecting them from these things, but she doesn't communicate that well. Like if she just had like a conversation and was like, I'm gonna do this, like tell them your plan. Like in the previous episode, I remember praising how well she kind of made connections with Bess and George. Like they had that friendship moment, they had that bonding moment. And then in this episode, she kind of takes a step back from that and goes back to being guarded and not telling everybody everything and being, I don't want to say untrusting of her friends, but it comes off that way when you don't tell somebody something. They're like, oh, so you don't trust me with that? And I think in her mind, she's like, I'm protecting them. But if you don't vocalize that, how do you expect them to see it? They're going to be a little bit hurt that up until this point, you are all in it together. And now you're off with the previous enemy and you're not explaining why.
And she's not used to having to explain herself. You can tell that. Like she's used to, I found this thing, I'm going to give you the information about it. You can give me some information back that I don't know about. But this is not a partnership. Like they always have to sort of like force the issue, or if her agenda needs additional bodies, then she's okay with having additional bodies. If it doesn't, then she's like a lone wolf and she can figure it out herself. And none of them want to do that. They want to be the true crew. They want to solve things together. And she's just not there yet. She has a lot of emotional intelligence. She doesn't have a lot of emotional intelligence when it comes to her personal relationships, which is funny because George has a lot of emotional intelligence. She just doesn't always use it. But in this episode, she did. Like she's watching Nick the entire time. She's like, you're not 100% okay. He's like, I rounded up. It's like, no, because it's not even like you're 98% okay. You're like hovering at a 50. You're not fine with what's going on. And she connects to that and she softens to it. And that's because George is a big old softie, though she hides it. She's soft towards Bess too.
Yeah, I was going to say that when she came in and knew the exact magic words that would make Bess smile after Elizabeth left the date. I think that was one of the most impressive moments for me because this was a big George episode, even though it wasn't a George episode. So I think if they've accomplished that they hit the nail on the head there. I'm very happy with where George is as a character, especially after the journey she's had over the last couple of episodes.
She's such a standout. And I feel like with each episode, we get like more and more of how, I'm going to make this prediction now. I think she's the glue that holds the group together. Or will become the glue that holds the group together.
Yeah, she's the one that'll whip them into shape. She's the natural leader, whereas Nancy thinks she is, but it's like, it's George. She runs the claw with an iron fist.
She does, and poor inventory day did not get done.
No,
but maybe they'll do it when they have like only one customer in the claw. I did love that Elizabeth mentioned that. She's like,
not Elizabeth dragging them. It's like that was not necessary. And Paul, can I just say justice for Ace a little bit in this episode? He was the waiter, he was the chauffeur. Right. He did cut the power at the big mansion, which was immediately turned back on. But I was like, why does Ace have to be the chauffeur? But he loves being the silly guy. But I was like, come on, we need more Ace. Maybe that's just me.
It was an Ace light episode, which is why there was also, I believe, no Nace. So there's no Nace watch. This review, but he was a very solid put anchor for Bess, who was freaking out about this. I still really
love their dynamic so much.
It's so sweet.
And I think more so than like the mystery, I'm really looking forward because what we've really connected with and what we talk about the most is like Nancy's development. So I think that's another thing that I'm like, as much as I want to know like the truth of the mystery, like I really want to see her growth and see her start to cool down and let more people in. I think that's what I'm looking forward to.
Definitely.
Same. Because there's that great conversation between her and Nick where she asks him to trust her and he asks her to trust him and let him in. And she says soon, which is, I've never heard anyone do that.
I know. Oh my gosh. Nancy.
And he's just supposed to be okay. And I think one of the things maybe that season 1 is going to cover is that you cannot put people on your timetable of growth. That's not how that works. It's not. And I think she's going to have to learn that the hard way, unfortunately.
And she'll deserve it.
She will.
Nancy. Love you so much, girl, but you need a rude awakening.
She does. And she'll probably get one, I guess, coming soon. But we'll be Team Nancy forever. Just Nick break up with her. Hey, so since we are on a Nancy Drew journey, you guys, we are doing a special giveaway of all 3 seasons of Nancy Drew on DVD. And for the information on this contest, please go to our Twitter. We are at the CW Spiral, and you'll find a pinned tweet with everything that you have to do in order to get into the contest.
Let's go, Drew Crew.
Woo woo. So, Michael, it is your time to talk all about Stargirl. Well, as much as you can without CW once again being like, slow your roll.
It's all good. I got the go ahead on this one. So yeah, Stargirl season 3 premieres Wednesday, August 31st. That is not the last time I'm going to say that. So season 3. I have to say, I've seen the first episode, and it maintains that wonderfully nostalgic tone that we love about the show so much. It's a very high quality production. It's filmed, it's shot like a movie. It's got a lovely golden age look about it. And I have to say, all of that within the first 2 minutes of season 3, all of that is back. It felt like I was watching season 1 all over again. So what can I talk about season 3? This stuff's already out there, so I'll talk about that. Season 3 is basically a murder mystery. And a character in the town of Blue Valley, we don't know how, but a character dies, and it's up to the Justice Society of America and their former enemies, the Injustice Society, to work together to figure out who committed the murder. The heroes obviously want to solve the murder, while the villains need to prove themselves that they didn't do it. The season is subtitled Stargirl Frenemies, just like last season was subtitled Summer School. So again, it's about working with their enemies. I love it. Yes, it's so good. It's so lighthearted, but at the same time, it's obviously it has some heavy stuff to deal with. But I have to say, from what I've seen so far, it feels like you're going to watch an Agatha Christie novel unfold with cosmic staffs and superhero outfits and bright colors and a lot of fun. I am really looking forward to whatever the season has in store, because it very well could be the best season yet. This is the first time we're going into the show with its clear storyline outlined. And I think, judging by the names of the episodes, the first episode is called The Murder, the second episode is called The Suspects. I think each episode is going to get us that little bit closer to who actually committed the murder. And we're going to see if the Justice Society and the Injustice Society can work together to solve who committed the murder, or find out, did one of them commit the murder? So there's a lot going into Stargirl season 3. I think it's got all the makings of being its best season yet. It's a lot of fun, but at the same time, there are some great character moments, and that's just in the first episode. And I can't wait to see the story unfold. The thing that sets Stargirl apart from the rest of the shows on the network, bar maybe Superman and Lois, is that it's not episodic. It's basically a 13-part movie, and this definitely looks like it's going to be the same, but with a dash of Agatha Christie to make it slightly more episodic, with the murder, the suspects, and all of the above. So I'm very excited for the season. I have waited so long for more Stargirl, and I will be tuning in on Wednesday, August 31st at 8 p.m. to watch the season 3 premiere. And I hope everyone else will tune in, because we don't know what shows will make it out of the season alive. Stargirl is an expensive show about a teenager, and we know the CW does not like that anymore. So please, everyone, tune in. If you're not going to tune in, leave your televisions on the CW on August 31st on Wednesday at 8 p.m. You two do the same. Just kidding.
Well, I was about to say, that was an amazing pitch. Like, you convinced me to watch it, and I've had zero interest in the show. I'm going to be honest, zero interest in the show. And now I'm like, am I watching Stargirl season 3? I think I am.
Sounds really cool. Like, it sounds like you had us at murder mystery.
I'm glad. Season 1 was very grounded, but it was basically the JSA versus the ISA. Season 2 was about a supernatural demon. So I think season 3 takes it right back to the heart of the show, being all about the town. And it's going to focus on all of the characters. Some of them are going to be obviously heroes. Some of them are obviously going to be villains. How will they work together? And is there a greater threat that they should all be working together to take down? It's light, it's fun, it's youthful, and yet at the same time, it has all those same production values that Superman always does. It's a big budget show. It's of a higher standard than most of the stuff you'll see on the CW. And I say that as a lifelong CW fan. This show deserves to be seen on the biggest screen possible, but I will accept you all watching it on the small screen on Wednesday, August 31st at 8 p.m. Tune in. You will not regret it.
Well, perhaps I will be watching on Wednesday, August 31st at 8 p.m. on the CW.
Say.
Turn that TV on, you guys.
Do it. Save Stargirl.
So, Vita, are you doing your In the Dark catch up? Are we doing a little?
Yeah, let's get into the Dark. I had planned. I've been like 4 episodes behind. I think it was 3 or maybe 5. I don't even know. I think the last one that I talked about was the trial.
Yeah, well, at least you're watching, because Roswell, Mexico hasn't seen me since the premiere. So, like,
so I did catch up. I just hadn't been in the mood to watch it, but I decided to catch up because I saw a promo with Murphy and Max together, and I was like, that's not how I left them. So let me see what's happening. So I catch up, and my feelings have been hurt. There's some stuff that like I don't love, like the episode where Murphy and Max get back together. They spent like an hour in a motel room just like screaming at each other, and it got a little too real. And I was like, I don't know if I wanted to see them, spoiler, get engaged after they're just like yelling I hate you at each other for an hour. It was a lot. As much as I do love them and wanted them to be together, I was like, maybe not that way. Okay, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each episode, because at the end of the most recent episode, there was a revelation that had me wanting to throw my remote at the television and just like flip tables. So do you remember at the beginning of the season when I told you guys that Murphy, there was a flash forward to Murphy in a nice dress, and she was walking down the hallway with Darnell, and it's hinted that something happens to Darnell and he dies. You guys remember that? Okay.
Yeah.
So we're finally getting to that because there's only 2 episodes left. So we get another flash forward of, in this most recent episode, of Murphy in the dress with Darnell. And then it cuts to her on the ground screaming and crying, and there's a person on the ground who is clearly not well. We don't see who that person is, which I've come to realize, but there's a close-up on a button on the coat. And at the end of the episode, we see Max and Murphy getting ready for whatever this event is. I don't remember what it is, but it's not important to my feelings. But there's a close-up on the button on Max's jacket.
Oh no.
I just got chills. It is not Darnell who is on the ground possibly dying. It is Max.
Of course it is. Okay.
If this man dies, the amount of anger I will feel for watching these 4 seasons of the show, exponential. And I'm not usually one to get really angry, because I remember when Veronica Mars came back, and in the revival in the last episode, spoiler to anybody that has not watched this show that's been out for 5 years now, they kill Logan after he and Veronica get married. I wasn't like the most angry about that, because I didn't really like Logan, if I'm being honest. So I was like, whatever. Fans hated that, which I understand. I get the anger behind it even more now, because I actually like Max. And if you're going to tell me that these 2 finally got engaged, which is wild and crazy, and they're going to kill him, it better be like a misdirect. He better not actually be dead, or I'm going to throw a fit on this podcast. Any thoughts? Talk me down.
Okay, so you just see a close-up of the button, right? You don't see the person at all.
I don't believe so, but Murphy is saying while she's like feeling the wound, because she obviously can't see, but she's like, by feeling the wound in the blood, she's like, this person is dead, and she's saying, I love you. That's not something she would say to Darnell.
Oh, wow.
So the button matches, and she's saying, I love you, and I'm like, oh my god, it's Max. And
well, hopefully it is sort of a it's just to get you to tune into the next episode, and it's plot twist, not who you thought it was sort of situation. I have to say, I'm probably not the person to talk you down, considering the fact that one of my favorite shows was The 100. And this is a spoiler for anyone who did not finish that. Clark shoots Bellamy in the last 2 episodes, and then she just leaves him and he dies. And
if they do more of this, they pull back and show more of this, and it was somehow Murphy that shot him, I'll be right there with you.
Yeah, because it's wild shock writing. You know what? Let's just get up on the soapbox. Please, writers, when you write things, shock writing is not the writing that you should go with. You know why shock writing is bad? It's because it throws away everything you built seasons worth of. For the one moment of, yes, you'll have an audience spike. And then what is the legacy of your show? You done pissed off everybody in the fandom, and people most likely aren't going to tune into what you do next because they don't trust you. Like, don't do that. Doing a bait and switch, fine. It's emotionally manipulative, but fine. Like killing your main dude and having your lead, your girl, traumatized over it. Not the motion. It's not it. Please don't do it. Hopefully they didn't do that.
I have to issue an apology to Cody, our friend, our colleague, and a friend of the pod, a frequent listener.
Yes.
We argued when Stranger Things season 4 came out, and he was very adamant that he did not like the death fake outs in season 4 of Stranger Things. And I was like, I don't know, it worked for me. And now I'm watching a potential death fake out. And there actually was, because they made us think it was Darnell, and it turns out it's not Darnell for now, allegedly. We'll see. But Cody, I understand. And I'm sorry.
You said when you're secretly hoping it's a fake out.
I know. I just don't like being in this position of being emotionally manipulated. I don't want them to do it. That's not the argument that I'm making. I'm just like mad that it's happening at all. I don't know. At least this far into the season, I don't want to be worried about Max going into the series finale. If they were going to do this, I wish they would have just shown it being Max from the beginning, so that like throughout the whole season, we're kind of like, oh my God, is Max going to actually die? Or like, how does this happen? But yeah, I was so frustrated when I saw that, and I was like, well, I'm not talking about any of the other episodes, I'm talking about that moment.
But hopefully it's emotion manipulation, and it is a bait and switch, not it's emotion manipulation, but actually we are actually going to kill him and have fun with that feeling. Because I just, you know what, manifesting that does not happen to you.
Fingers
I
crossed.
know a hit piece is coming on the pod if it does. And we just leave space.
I will say that the we already know that the show filmed 2 different endings. They filmed a cliffhanger ending because, as we've talked about in the history of this podcast, no one knew if they were going to be renewed. So In the Dark clearly took that and was like, maybe we get renewed and we use the cliffhanger, maybe we just don't. And so they filmed 2 endings, and they obviously did not use the cliffhanger. So fingers crossed, all's well that ends well.
Yes. Do you have to wait a week, or is it coming back on?
I think it ends the first week of September, and it's all in succession, so no breaks.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Then you don't have to sit there for like 2 to 3 weeks waiting for news about Max.
Justice for Max.
Justice for Max. So before we end, Reed, I know you've been excited about the 90210.
So excited.
But get them excited for it.
Yes. Next week, we're going to do a full pod about the CW's 90210 for its 14th anniversary. I'll explain why we're celebrating the 14th and not the 15th. But yeah, we're going to be talking about, I'm going to do a little oral history of the show and talk about my favorite. And we're going to talk about the first episode. So if you want to watch along with us, we're all going to watch the pilot and discuss it in detail and be honest. The 2 of you, I'm telling you, you don't have to pretend to like it for me. We'll talk honestly about it. So yeah, prepare for a fun hour of 90210.
I'm excited because we this has been like a few like nostalgic weeks for us, and we're doing some more nostalgia now, going back to the early aughts, mid aughts,
Like
teen
2008.
dramas.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, right when teen dramas were kind of dying. So this would have been one of the last great.
Yeah, they snuck in the door.
Yeah. All right, I cannot wait for that, for the 90210 pod. But this is it for us for this pod, you guys. So we are the CW Spiral. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Michael.
I'm Reed.
Bye, y'all. Watch the 90210 pilot.